All right. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Yeah, we're already on lecture 3, so it's already been 3 weeks. So we're going to talk a bit about consumer behavior today. But before we get into it, you probably noticed that I posted the groups for your group projects on Quarkus. So those are the kind of finalized groups. If you supplied me with your group, that should be what you see. And if you kind of requested a group be formed, then you have that. So you'll be given a chance to talk a bit with your group members later in class. So if you haven't met them yet, you can introduce yourself. But just to remind you, kind of the term project is going to be to create this marketing plan. But the first due date is coming up. It's October 8th. And for that, all that's required is this 2-page proposal. And remember, all I ask is 2 paragraphs. 1, what is the product? 2, who is your target market, right? So make sure that those 2 things are very clear. So I posted on Quarkus an example of a good proposal from last year. So if you're thinking about, what should I be describing? That's definitely a good one. It's a good idea. It's clearly communicated. And there's a clear description of who's the target market and why they pick that target market. Okay, cool. But, whatever you propose, we'll have meetings after fall break so that I can give you feedback. So don't worry too much about getting it perfect. Just make sure you try to communicate those 2 things. So the roadmap for today, we'll talk through the survey results about the Apple Watch classification. So we'll do that first. Then we'll talk about market research. We'll break at that point. And then in the second half of the class, we'll talk a bit about consumer behavior and business behavior, right? So, this class will be talking about a rational model of consumer behavior, where we imagine consumers kind of go through a process where they search for information about this product, and they kind of evaluate the alternatives, and then they pick one alternative that kind of gives them the most benefit. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And then next class, we'll be talking about sort of a not rational consumer, a more psychologically motivated consumer, who kind of maybe has some interesting quirks that we as marketers can think about using when we're kind of guiding them through the marketing sort of funnel or marketing process. Right, so onto the survey. What did I ask? I asked you how to classify the Apple Watch in the BCG growth share matrix. Right, so we had these 4 different classifications: question mark, star, cash cow, and dog. Again, there's a check mark here, but there's no right answer. They're all good answers. So let me ask some of you guys, because we do have every answer represented here. Let's see kind of what you guys thought and why you picked the options that you did. So we'll start with question mark. And is Zhuoxi here?
Hi, Professor.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay. In my opinion, I think the watch industry, the Apple Watch for the whole industry is only occupy a small part, not for the very much for the relevant market shares. So, and for his market growth rate, I think because he has a Apple's Watch will bring some appearance improvement every year, so the market growth rate is in the high part. And in some research, it said the last year Apple Watch occupied the market rate increase about 6%. So I think it's a question mark.
Yeah, so I think that is, I agree, that's kind of a good market growth rate. So let me ask you, when you say it occupies a small share of the industry,
Yeah.
When you think about the industry, kind of what are you thinking of? Are you thinking about smartwatches or wearables
The
or
whole
even?
watches industry, it also include the traditional watch industry such as the Casio and Swatch, that all.
Okay, that's really interesting. So yeah, so thank you, Zosi. So um, if you're taking anyone buying any kind of watch, right, from
Yeah,
smartwatches to more traditional watches
yeah,
as your market, then for sure the Apple Watch is a very, very small share of that. So
yeah,
that's interesting, and I totally agree. If that's how you define it, and I think that's a fine way to define it, right? You might think everyone who buys a watch could be someone who eventually buys an Apple Watch, right?
yeah.
So I think that's good. All right, so thank you.
No problem.
And I see maybe one hand up. Yeah, Pepe.
Hi, Professor. So
Hi.
I think the Apple Watch can be classified as a question mark because when we look at the whole market for watches, it is undeniable that Apple does a great job in technological innovation, which makes its products become more like advanced and competitive. So it also brings the company a high growth rate. However, in terms of the market share, it it is relatively less competitive because there are more other well-performed and developed brands in current market like Rolex, Casino, and Daniel Wellington, and so on. So this company, they can also offer high quality products, but also focus more on decoration and luxury. Therefore, so we could say Apple Watch is dominant in the smartwatch market, but not in the whole market for watches. So I think it's more likely a question mark in this case.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Pepe. So that was kind of another basically student who said, listen, it's the whole watch industry that we should be looking at when we're calculating the market share. So yeah, that's super cool. That's interesting. And if the Apple Watch is a dog, then that will give certain recommendations on what to do, right? Or sorry, if it's a question mark, we should be potentially investing a lot more into it to try to grab more market share. So let me now ask someone who chose star. Let's see. Is Kai Fei here?
Yeah, Professor.
Hi, we can hear you.
I think. Oh, sorry. Wait. Um, sorry. I think my research that the relative smartwatch market share is 50%, 55% in 2020, and the market growth rate of the Apple Watch is 23%. But the relative to the global smart grows by 20% year by year, so I believe that Apple Watch has high relative market share and high market growth rate.
Okay, cool. So you conducted some research, and in the smartwatch market, Apple is the biggest, and it's also growing the fastest.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so you defined the size of market as anyone buying a smartwatch is a potential Apple Watch customer. Okay, cool. So awesome. Thank you, Kai Fei. So I'll let one of the people who has their hands up, maybe using, if you have kind of more to add to Kai Fei's answer.
Yeah. So based on the research I did, the Apple Watch has a huge market share of global smartwatch, and also based on the unique features that Apple Watch has, like such as a fitness partner and a health insights. So I think it would have a high market growth rate. So that's why I chose Star.
Okay. So you also did research and kind of concluding, yeah, for the smartwatch market, Apple is the best. Right?
Yeah.
They're performing the best. Okay, cool. So let's move on now to someone who chose Cash Cow. Similar to Star in the sense that they're also thinking it's a big market share. but for cash cow growth rate would be low. So let me see, Howard.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Professor.
Hey, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think Apple Watch is a cash cow because just like what they say, Apple Watch has a big market share in the smartwatch market, but I think the growth rate of Apple Watch like really depends on the growth rate of like other Apple products such as iPhone, right? I think most of the Apple Watch users like they will definitely be an iPhone user first, then they will consider to purchase a smartwatch that can use with their iPhones. So I think it's a cash cow because it cannot maintain a really high growth rate after most of the people who has iPhone already have an Apple Watch.
Okay, that's really interesting. So can I ask you then, would you consider like the market potential for the Apple Watch, like the size of the market, to basically only be people who already have an Apple product, like an iPhone or an Apple computer? It's kind of like only if you already have an Apple product, are you willing to buy an Apple Watch?
I think most of the people is like that. I think right now for the Apple Watch, I think some people like elder people's like because the Apple Watch has some protections like helps for your health, right? But most of the function that it has need to be used with iPhones. So I think it really limits its growth rate. But I think the total market of the smartwatch is grows very fast. Also like the wearable product.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, so that's a great perspective. So now we've kind of had maybe three. So yeah, thanks, Howard. We've had maybe three different definitions for the market potential, right? All watches, including just regular watches without smart features. Maybe everyone who has a watch should be a potential buyer of a smartwatch. Two, kind of just the smartwatch market, right? So, you know, competing with like the Samsung Gear or things like that. Or three, only people who kind of have an Apple product are potential buyers of the Apple Watch. So really, when you want to compute that kind of market potential, how big could the market for the Apple Watch be? You have to think about Apple consumers, right? Because the two kinds of products go really close together. Okay. And Nokin has just written, should the Apple Watch also be considered part of the fitness product market? Cool, yeah, so that's maybe another definition. Maybe it's just wearables in general, right? So things like a Fitbit is potentially a Fitbit customer could be buying an Apple Watch in the future, right? And so Albert says, how can we know and estimate the size or market for Apple? So we don't want to know the size or market for Apple in general, just the Apple Watch. And that's kind of part of this exercise, right? So if you're saying, how do we find data on how many people own an Apple product so that we can use that as part of, say, like Howard's definition, that the market potential are all Apple product owners, that's probably something you can just Google, you know, see, all right, you know, how many iPhones are out there? What's the iPhone share of the smartphone market? Or what's the Apple computer share of the computer market? So maybe you can kind of find that information and then use that to construct. Perfect. So, and let's go to one of our two respondents who said, actually, this is a dog. It's low market share, low growth rate. So maybe a product that should be discontinued. And let's see, is Shiqi here? Shiqima? Looks like no. All right, so then that only leaves Rohan Lee. Okay, and in chat. Okay, small market share. Okay, and using kind of the definition that all watches are kind of the relevant market here. Any watch buyer is a potential Apple Watch buyer, but very few of those people buy an Apple Watch. Yeah, and the growth rate isn't as high as some other watch only brands. So that's something that maybe you want to look a bit more into and see if there is kind of a large growth rate for the Apple Watch compared to just like watch only brands like Rolex or some of the other ones that were mentioned. But yeah, so this has been really good. You know, we can see that like with different definitions of the market, we have different classifications leading to different recommendations for what to do. Is there a correct definition of the market? Not really. You kind of need to decide based on the information that you have, what you think the size of the market should be, right? And Kelsey says, if the functionality of smartwatches is already at its peak, does that mean the growth for the market is low? Yeah, so in general, for like a mature product that doesn't have much innovation, the growth rate for the market tends to be slower. But again, it depends. Do you think that the Apple Watch and smartwatches in general have kind of peaked, that they're doing as much as they can do right now? Or do you think in the future they might have extra functions that people really value? Okay, cool. So let's go on to basic market research. So here's our first 4 stages of the marketing process once again, right? And last lecture, we talked about the origin of customer needs, which was kind of a lack, right? You're lacking something, and wants, which is a need, but in a specific context for a specific person, right? You know, my need is like, I need food, but I want a specific product, right? But then what comes next, right? If we are thinking about wants and specific products, maybe we have a new product, or maybe we're trying to modify a current product. And what we want to know is there demand for our product? Which is to say, are there people who want it and who can actually buy it, right? So demand is different than wants because it's wants backed up by buying power, okay? So one question that we want to answer is, can we develop a product that will satisfy our market, right? That's one possible research question. And it fits into a framework, a more general framework of kind of marketing research. So marketing research is this process where we collect and analyze information to guide current marketing decisions. Last class, we talked a little bit about a particular kind of research, doing a SWOT analysis or doing the growth share matrix, right? Those were both types of research. Here, we'll talk about kind of research where you're thinking about collecting data from your potential customers, right? So we're going to walk through each of these 4 steps. Sort of how we set our research objective, how we develop a research plan, how we then collect data to fulfill our research plan. And once we have the data, you know, what's a good way to interpret and report the findings? So what is the purpose of research? It's to help us make better choices as marketers, right? That could mean affecting our choice of strategy, right? What needs should we be addressing? Which consumers should we serve? How should we position our company compared to our competitors, right? It could also affect your choice of tactics, right? So when we were doing the Uber example last class, and we were doing our kind of SWOT analysis research from the news articles, right? We were kind of thinking, should this affect the product that Uber offers, right? Expand into new product spaces like food delivery, which it didn't have in 2015. So your market research could affect your pricing, your product you offer, where you offer the product, the place, or the promotions that you run, right? But at the end of the day, the research should do something. It should allow you to change something, or in terms of strategy or tactics, or it should reinforce that you're making the correct decision. So first step, setting research objectives and your research question. There's a few different kinds of research objective. So the first one is an exploratory objective. So an exploratory objective means I want to gather information to understand the problem, right? An exploratory objective can be sort of quite vague. So I'm going to contrast it with a descriptive objective, where with a descriptive objective, you're basically trying to describe either, what is the market potential? Who is my market, right? Who should I serve? What do those people look like? What features of my product do they like? That's a descriptive objective. I want to describe kind of something about my consumers or about my product, or maybe about my competitors. So oftentimes I'll lump exploratory and descriptive together. So I'm never going to put you in a situation on a test where I say, tell me if this is exploratory or if it's descriptive, because the line between them is not so sharp sometimes. But if you in your mind are thinking, how should I kind of classify these? If I see an objective, how should I classify it as exploratory or descriptive? With descriptive, you know that you're not sure about something, right? I know that I'm not quite sure who my customer is, or I know that I'm not quite sure what features of my product they like, right? But I kind of know what it is that I'm not sure about. With exploratory, sometimes you don't even know what you're not sure about, right? There's things out there that I'm not sure, that I don't even know about, but that maybe I should be paying attention to. So I just want to learn about, what do kind of people sort of care about, or what is on people's radar in terms of things that they're thinking about, okay? The last research objective is very different than the other two. It's testing hypothesis about a cause and effect relationship. That's a causal objective, right? So I'm testing, does changing something about my product or my pricing or my strategy affect something that I care about, like how much I sell or how many repeat customers I have, right? So you're testing, if I change this, what's the effect on that? Research objectives, when do you kind of need to come up with them? Oftentimes, if there's a new event or a new technology, or even if you just have a thought, which is maybe important to how you're running your business, and you kind of need to test it, right? So let's kind of look at a few situations where you might feel you need to set a research objective and think about kind of what kind of research objectives you can come up with. So first one, suppose that you're the marketing manager for Lego. So what's Lego? It's a company that makes toys. They make the little blocks that you kind of put together and you build different things with. So you're the marketing manager for Lego, right? And your initial thought, maybe from talking to a friend or talking to a parent, you realize, oh, I don't think that Lego is very popular with girls. I think maybe only boys play with Lego, right? So you have that thought, right? And so one question you might ask then is, well, is that true, right? What are the Lego user demographics? I want to describe kind of who it is that's playing with Lego, who it is that's buying Lego. So when we think about this objective type, and we think about those three options, exploratory, descriptive, or causal, yeah, so Isabella writes descriptive objective. I agree, right? We're trying to describe our market, right? Describe our customers, okay? So next one, I'll ask you guys to maybe think of a research question that might be motivated by the thought. So you're an independent app developer, right? So you're writing software. And your thought is that machine learning tools, which are kind of statistical tools, can be used to predict trending hashtags, right? So you can use statistics now to maybe predict which hashtag is going to be popular before it becomes too popular, right? So that's interesting, right? Hashtags are used all over social media. If you can figure out what's a popular one before it gets really popular, then that might be interesting, right? Interesting how. So I'll give you guys maybe a second. Feel free to write in chat any kind of question that occurs to you, any question at all, motivated by this thought. Perfect. Jeremy says, does it work, right? So do these statistical tools actually perform to predict a trending hashtag, right? So that's almost, that feels almost like an exploratory question, right? Like, yeah, there's this thing and it's supposed to work well, but will it work well in this context of predicting hashtags? Good. How can they use this? Right, good. So how can they use it? And maybe, so let's say if you have this tool and you say, hey, I can predict what's going to be a popular hashtag. Does anyone care? Who cares, right? Who would be interested in that? So maybe one research question is, well, what kind of companies are interested in hashtag trends, right? Are there any companies out there that I could sell this app to that they would be interested in knowing, right? Why might they be interested? You know, a lot of reasons, right? If they can get on a popular hashtag, that creates more visibility for their posts, that creates more visibility for their brand, right? So what kind of companies should I be trying to sell to? That's a question where it could help me direct my marketing effort once I have the app. And that would be a descriptive, right? I'm describing who is my target market once again, right? Who wants to buy it? Let's think about another one. Suppose you own a coffee shop. And so you're selling coffee, you have employees, and you realize after reading the news that the minimum wage is going up. So the wage that you pay your employees will increase. So it'll be more expensive for you. This is something that you need to react to as the owner. So what kind of research question should you be asking to sort of help you respond to this situation? Perfect. So are people willing to pay more? Good. So if the costs go up, then maybe my prices should go up. And if my prices go up, I'm going to lose customers. So how will that affect my revenue? Perfect. Are people satisfied with the service? My chat is misbehaving a bit. Can everyone still see and hear me? Give me an emote, like a thumbs up or a hand if you can. All right, so I'm going to restart the class because I can no longer see you guys and I can't see the chat.
We could hear you, Professor.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, I can't see the chat, which is a bit of a problem. All right, so I'll try to fix this during the break. And I'll just keep going in the meantime. So in the meantime, actually, since I can't see the chat, I'm going to need you guys to speak up, and I can't see your profiles either. So if you have a response, you can feel free to kind of jump in. So we have this question that I think a lot of you were writing in chat before I lost it. How will consumers respond if I raise prices? So can someone jump in and tell me what kind of research objective would that be? Can you guys still hear me?
I think it's a causal objective.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. Right? We want to know how will sort of consumers' purchases change if I raise prices, right? What is the effect of changing one thing on something that I care about, right? Perfect. Okay. So last one, suppose you're a movie studio executive and the thought you have is COVID-19 has affected box office sales. So it's affected the amount of tickets that are sold in movie theaters, right?
Sorry, Professor, like the screen was freeze, I think.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Did you like continue on your PowerPoint?
I did. Yeah, there should be a
Yeah.
fourth line now, but there's no fourth line.
Yep, it's freeze.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to restart Zoom. So everyone who can hear me, I'm going to shut it down and then restart it with the same link. So just kind of jump back in within a minute or so. All right, so I'm ending it. Going to end it now. If I'm able.